I never believed in the tales of vampires until I encountered one myself. It was a stormy night in late October when I first saw her, the Empress of Darkness. My small town, nestled in the heart of a sprawling forest, had always felt safe, even cozy, despite the eerie myths that surrounded it. But that night, everything changed. I was coming home from a late shift at the local diner. The rain pounded against my umbrella, and the wind howled through the trees. The streets were deserted, and the only light came from the occasional flickering street lamp. As I hurried along the cobblestone path, I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. It was as if the shadows themselves were watching me. As I rounded a corner, I saw her. She stood under a lamp-post, her figure barely illuminated by the weak, sputtering light. Her long, dark hair flowed like a river of ink, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural crimson hue. Her presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying. I froze, unable to move or speak, as she slowly turned to face me. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice smooth and cold. I couldn't find my voice to respond. Instead, I took a hesitant step backward, my instincts screaming to run. But her gaze held me captive, and I felt my feet were rooted to the ground. She stepped closer, movements graceful and silent like a predator stalking its prey. "There's no need to be afraid," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." Despite her words, I felt no comfort. My heart pounded, and my breath came in shallow gasps. As she drew nearer, I noticed the sharp, glistening fangs that protruded from her mouth. Panic surged through me, and I finally found the strength to turn and flee. I ran blindly through the rain, not daring to look back. My mind raced with thoughts of the stories I'd heard, the whispered legends of a vampire queen who ruled the night, preying on the innocent and the unsuspecting. It couldn't be true, I told myself. Vampires were just myths, tales to scare children. But the fear that gripped me felt all too real. When I reached my house, I slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. I peered out the window, half expecting to see her standing there, but the street was empty. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, clutching a kitchen knife, waiting for the dawn. The following days were a blur of paranoia and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I started seeing her in my dreams, vivid nightmares where I was trapped in a dark, endless forest, her crimson eyes glowing in the darkness. One night, an older man approached me as I closed the diner. He was a regular, always sitting in the same corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee. His name was Samuel, and he was known for his wild stories about the town's haunted history. "You've seen her, haven't you?" he asked, his voice low and serious. I nodded, my hands trembling. "Who is she?" "The Empress of Darkness," he replied. "She's been around for centuries, feeding on the fear and blood of the living. No one knows where she came from, but those who see her are never the same." "How do you stop her?" I whispered, desperate for answers. Samuel leaned closer, his eyes filled with fear and determination. "There are ways," he said, "but it won't be easy. You need to find the relics of the old hunters who nearly destroyed her long ago. Only they hold the power to end her reign." Samuel's words echoed in my mind as I went home that night, the relics of the old hunters. I had no idea where to start looking, but I knew I had no choice. The Empress of Darkness would not stop until she had what she wanted, me. The following morning, I decided to visit the town library. It was an old building filled with dusty books and forgotten histories. It would be here if any place could shed light on the hunters and their relics. Mrs. Whitmore, the librarian, greeted me with a warm smile. "What brings you in today?" she asked. "I'm looking for information on the town's history," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Specifically, anything about vampire hunters." Her smile faded slightly, and she gave me a curious look. "That's a rather specific request. Are you researching for a project?" "Something like that," I replied, not wanting to reveal too much. She led me to the back of the library, where the oldest books were kept. "This section has some of the town's oldest records and folklore. You might find what you're looking for here." I spent hours poring over the ancient texts, searching for any mention of the hunters and their relics. Finally, I came across a faded journal that belonged to one of the original settlers. It spoke of a group of warriors who had dedicated their lives to hunting the Empress. They were known as the Order of the Dawn and had created powerful relics imbued with their strength and magic. The journal detailed the locations of three key relics: a dagger forged from silver and blessed by a holy man, an amulet that protected its wearer from dark magic, and a book of incantations that held the secrets to banishing the Empress forever. The dagger was hidden in the ruins of an old chapel on the outskirts of town. The amulet was buried in the grave of the Order's leader, and the book was locked away in a chest, hidden deep within the forest. I copied the information and set out on my quest. My first stop was the old chapel. It was a crumbling structure, overgrown with vines and moss. As I searched the ruins, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs made my heart race. Finally, I found the dagger hidden beneath a loose stone on the altar. Next, I made my way to the cemetery. It was a sad place, filled with weathered tombstones and the lingering scent of decay. Finding the grave of the Order's leader took hours, but eventually I stood before a large, ornate tombstone. I dug carefully, my hands trembling, until I unearthed a small, intricately carved box. Inside was the amulet, its surface shimmering with a faint, otherworldly glow. The final leg of my journey took me deep into the forest. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees, and I felt a growing dread. After what felt like an eternity, I found the chest hidden beneath the roots of an ancient oak tree. The lock was rusted and fragile, breaking quickly under the weight of a nearby rock. Inside, wrapped in a cloth, was the Book of Incantations. With the relics, I returned to town, feeling hope and fear. I met Samuel at the diner, showing him what I had found. His eyes widened with amazement and relief. "You've done it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "But the hardest part is yet to come. We must confront the Empress and use these relics to end her reign." That night, under the cover of darkness, we made our way to the forest's heart, where the Empress's lair was said to be. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to thicken around us. We arrived at the entrance of a cave, its mouth gaping like the maw of a beast. "Are you ready?" Samuel asked, gripping the dagger tightly. I nodded, clutching the amulet and the book. "Let's end this." As we stepped into the darkness, I could feel the presence of the Empress growing stronger. Her sinister laughter echoed through the cave, sending chills down my spine. We moved deeper into the lair, our footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. Finally, we reached a large chamber. There she stood, her crimson eyes glowing with malice, her fangs bared in a menacing smile. "Welcome," she purred. "I've been expecting you." My heart pounded as we faced the Empress. The chamber was cold, the air thick with the scent of decay. Shadows danced on the walls, twisted shapes that seemed to move themselves. Samuel took a step forward, brandishing the silver dagger. "We're here to end your reign," he declared, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped us both. The Empress laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can stop me with those trinkets?" she taunted. "Many have tried before you, and all have failed." Ignoring her words, I opened the Book of Chants, searching for the spell that would banish her. The ancient text was written in a language I didn't understand, but the words seemed to resonate in my mind, guiding me. I recited the incantation, my voice growing stronger with each syllable. The Empress's eyes narrowed, and she moved toward us with supernatural speed. Samuel swung the dagger, but she dodged effortlessly, her movements a blur. She lunged at him, her fangs aimed at his throat. In a desperate move, he raised the amulet, and a burst of light erupted from it, forcing her back with a hiss. "Keep reading," Samuel shouted, his voice strained. I focused on the book, my hands shaking as I continued the chant. The words flowed from my lips, filling the chamber with a strange, resonant energy. The Empress writhed in pain, her form flickering as if struggling to maintain its shape. With a roar of fury, she lunged at me, but Samuel intercepted her, driving the dagger into her side. She screamed a sound that seemed to shake the very foundation of the cave. Black blood oozed from the wound, and she staggered back, her eyes burning with hatred. I reached the final verse of the magic, my voice rising to a crescendo. The relics began to glow, their combined power creating a blinding light that enveloped the Empress. She let out a final, anguished scream as her body dissolved into the light, her form disintegrating into nothingness. As the light faded, the chamber grew still. The oppressive darkness that had filled the cave lifted, replaced by an eerie silence. I collapsed to my knees, exhausted but relieved. It was over. The Empress of Darkness was gone. Samuel helped me to my feet, his face pale but triumphant. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with disbelief and relief. We made our way out of the cave, the night air fresh and cool. The forest seemed different, less menacing, as if a great evil had been lifted. We returned to town as dawn began to break, the first rays of sunlight piercing the horizon. In the days that followed, life in the town slowly returned to normal. The fear that had gripped the community began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. I kept the relics, a reminder of the battle we had fought and the evil we had defeated. But even as life moved on, I couldn't forget the Empress of Darkness. Her eyes, her voice, and her presence lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the night we faced true terror. I knew that the world was entirely of dark secrets, and though we had defeated one evil, many more lurked in the shadows. And so, I remained vigilant, constantly aware, and always prepared for the darkness that might one day return. Weeks turned into months, and the memory of that fateful night began to fade into the background of my daily life. The town returned to its quiet, unassuming routine, and I tried to do the same. But there was always a lingering feeling that something was amiss, a nagging doubt that the Empress's defeat might not be as final as we hoped. One evening, a stranger walked in as I was closing up the diner. He was tall and gaunt, with sharp features and an unsettling presence. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to see right through me. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I'm looking for someone, a young woman who recently defeated a great evil." I tensed, my heart skipping a beat. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled a cold, calculating smile that sent chills down my spine. "I'm an old friend of the Empress," he replied, "and I'm here to take back what you've stolen." Before I could react, he moved with blinding speed, pinning me against the counter. His grip was like iron, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "You thought you could defeat her?" he hissed. "Her power extends far beyond what you can comprehend." With adrenaline, I broke free and grabbed the amulet from my pocket. Holding it out in front of me, I invoked the protective charm. The amulet glowed brightly, and the stranger recoiled, his skin sizzling where the light touched him. "This isn't over," he snarled, vanishing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. I knew then that the battle was far from finished. The Empress's allies were out there, waiting for their chance to strike. I had to find a way to end this once and for all. I sought out Samuel once more. We needed a plan and a strategy to uncover and eliminate the remaining threats. Together, we delved deeper into the town's hidden history, finding more about the Order of the Dawn and their eternal struggle against the forces of darkness. The old records spoke of an ancient ritual, a final, decisive act that could forever sever the Empress's influence. It required a rare, powerful artifact known as the Heart of the Sun, a crystal imbued with the essence of pure light. According to legend, the heart was hidden in the ruins of an ancient castle, far beyond the town's borders. Armed with this new knowledge, Samuel and I prepared for the journey. The path to the castle was treacherous, fraught with natural and supernatural dangers, but we had no choice. The fate of our town, perhaps even the world, depended on our success. We set out at dawn, the first light of the day casting long shadows on the road ahead. The journey was arduous, taking us through dense forests, rocky hills, and swift rivers. We took turns keeping watch each night, always alert for signs of the Empress's minions. One evening, we were ambushed as we camped near a glistening lake. Dark figures emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing with evil intent. Samuel and I fought fiercely, using the relics to fend them off. The battle was brutal, and we barely escaped with our lives. Wounded but undeterred, we pressed on. Days turned into weeks, and the landscape grew harsher and more unforgiving. Finally, we reached the castle, a towering edifice of stone and shadow. It loomed over us, its broken battlements silhouetted against the stormy sky. Inside the castle was a labyrinth of dark corridors and crumbling staircases. We navigated its twisted halls, searching for the Heart of the Sun. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over us. We knew we were close. We found it in the heart of the castle, a chamber bathed in an eerie, golden light. The heart of the sun hovered in the center, pulsating with a warm, radiant glow. As we approached, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was the stranger from the diner, his eyes burning with fury. "You will not take the heart," he growled, drawing a wicked-looking blade. "The Empress's will is eternal." The stranger lunged at us, his blade gleaming with a sinister light. Samuel and I braced for the fight of our lives. I held the amulet high, its glow casting protective light around us, while Samuel gripped the silver dagger, ready to strike. The clash was fierce and unforgiving. The stranger moved with inhuman speed and strength, his attacks relentless. I recited incantations from the book, their power weaving through the air to bolster our defenses. Each time the stranger drew near, the amulet's light forced him back, burning his flesh and slowing his assaults. Samuel fought valiantly, matching the stranger's speed with precise, determined strikes. The dagger found its mark more than once, drawing black, oozing blood that hissed as it hit the ground. But the stranger seemed almost impervious to pain, driven by a dark, unyielding will. As the battle raged, I realized that mere defense would not be enough. We had to claim the heart of the sun and unleash its full power. Summoning courage, I broke away from the fight and rushed towards the glowing artifact. The stranger saw my intent and roared in fury, abandoning Samuel to intercept me. Just as he was about to strike, Samuel threw himself at the stranger, knocking him off balance. "Now!" Samuel shouted, his voice filled with desperation. I reached out, my fingers grazing the heart of the sun. A surge of warmth and energy coursed through me, filling me with a strength I had never known. The heart responded to my touch, its light intensifying until it blazed like a miniature sun. The stranger screamed, a sound of pure agony as the light enveloped him. His form twisted and writhed, struggling against the overwhelming power. With a final, desperate cry, he was consumed by the light, dissolving into nothingness. Samuel and I stood in the radiant chamber, breathing heavily. The heart of the sun floated serenely between us, its light gentle and reassuring. I knew then that this was the key to ending the Empress's reign once and for all. "We need to perform the ritual," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through me. Samuel nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Let's do it." Using the Book of Chants, we followed the ancient instructions for the ritual. We placed the heart of the sun in the chamber's center and surrounded it with the other relics, the dagger and the amulet. As we chanted the sacred words, the relics began to resonate with the heart, their combined energies creating a vortex of light and power. The ground trembled, and a blinding light filled the room. The air crackled with energy, and I felt an ancient and evil presence trying to resist. The Empress fought back, her essence woven into the fabric of darkness. But the heart of the sun was relentless. Its light pierced through the shadows, unraveling the dark magic that had sustained the Empress for centuries. With a final, earth-shaking roar, the darkness shattered, and the Empress's presence was torn from the world. The light slowly faded, leaving the chamber bathed in a soft, golden glow. The heart of the sun settled back into its serene state, its purpose fulfilled. Samuel and I looked at each other, exhausted but victorious. "It's over," Samuel said, a smile breaking through his weary features. We did it. We left the castle behind, the relics safely in our possession. The journey back to town was long, but peace and relief carried us forward. The Empress of Darkness was no more, and her reign of terror had finally ended. Back in town, life began to bloom anew. The shadows lifted, and the air seemed lighter, more accessible. The townspeople, unaware of the actual danger that had been averted, went about their lives blissfully ignorant of the battle that had been fought for their safety. As for me, I returned to my routine, but with a newfound appreciation for the ordinary moments of life. I knew that darkness would always exist in some form, but I also knew that light could prevail. And with the relics as a reminder, I vowed to remain vigilant, ready to protect my town from future threats that might emerge from the shadows.